Right.
Oh, is he? Just lost all respect. Old? Usually they live for long.
They're missing how you want like this conversation.
If they got 1 year ago. Love those scoreball shots. That eats all your leftover shoulder.
I'm going to skip a little bit of this.
Just okay. That's what I said.
She's transgender. She's a transgender cat. He thinks she's a dog.
Okay. Good morning. Nice program last night.
Yeah,
Right?
beautiful run.
Yeah. Okay. You failed to retrieve a lost item. Do you have any liability? Like, is there like a good Samaritan law in halacha? If you see a lost item, and we actually he did discuss this before, but I don't know why he's repeating it. If you see a lost item and you fail to take it, he says, even if the lost item was completely now irretrievable because it was, let's say, taken by unsavory people, or let's say it got ruined by being out in the elements, in the rain, or it was washed away by a river, you're not liable. No one can take you to a beis din. Hey, how come you just walked past my item? I didn't feel like retrieving it. But there is a chiyav b'dinei shamayim. So, in other words, he can't sue you in beis din, but he can tell you, Hashem's going to hold you liable, and if you want to. He quotes actually the Mishnah Brura, which is very interesting. He's actually quoting the Ramban. No one really says you're chayv b'dinei shamayim to pay the full amount, but he's making an inference, which makes sense when you think about it, because if I could have saved your item and failed to do so, I have, even just through my passivity, Hashem may hold me liable. Like, why did you just walk by? Why did you hide your eyes? And by the way, the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda applies to restoring people's souls to them. We talk about outreach. There's a mitzvah to help a person find his way back to Judaism. That's part of the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, not just returning people's property to them, but returning people's souls to them, which is brought down in a number of Sfarim. So if a person has the opportunity to do so and fails to do so, he's chayv b'dinei shamayim. Hashem will say to you, when you come up to Shamayim after 120 years, you had these talents, you had these abilities to help other Jews find their way back to Yiddishkeit. How come you didn't? And I think that's a question that everyone in our generation is going to be asked.
Well, we'd never say the individual is miyayish, is given up hope.
How can they be miyayish if they don't even know it's lost? Yeyush lo midas lo havi yeyush.
Right. I'm just trying to make all the concepts fit.
Yeah, right. That if you give up, if there's no, you don't know you've lost your soul.
Right.
So therefore you don't know it's lost. So therefore it's not yeyush. Okay. Okay.
I still don't understand everything. What does that mean?
What does chayv b'dinei shamayim mean?
So therefore, what God's going to strike? Like, what? What is it? What is the onus? What is the punishment? What is the?
I guess we'll all find out when we get upstairs.
No one's come back to that.
It doesn't go further than that. It just says like.
It doesn't mean Isa.
No, it doesn't mean misa b'dei shamayim. It doesn't. But
burning eternal hell and
yeah. But that kind of question led to no, thank you so much, led to a number of svarim written in the medieval period to give very graphic depictions of Gehenna. Yeah. Because people said, well, what happens to me? And, preachers would eventually say, well, you're going to be, if you committed sexual crimes, they're going to hang you by that organ with meat hooks in fire until,
Brimstone is
and,
what has to be with brimstone.
right. Yeah. And it's going to be perpetual pain, and that way you won't come to commit a sexual crime, right? And if you, and now, what is Gehenna? I mean, Gehenna is the sense of squandering, is the shame of squandering your life. And so it's really hard to know what that means for a disembodied soul. I guess we'll find out. Okay, next.
You just had the sense that it's not about burning, it's about just you blew it and you missed an opportunity to do something right.
That's what burning is, the burning sense of shame and just, can you imagine? There's no do-overs. Once we're gone, there's no do-overs. Unless you believe in reincarnation, in which case there's a do-over, but you're not even aware that you're doing something over. Right? So, but when you say Judaism, that's a very dangerous word, because there are some who do, not everyone. It depends how much of a Kabbalist you are.
Is it more that you weren't accepted and you're hanging here and you go into another body and you're showing the door that's floating? And what is that? I mean, that's a whole other.
Okay, next.
I think we've lost the object of the therapy.
Next halacha. Okay. Im haya hamotze chacham o zaken mechubad o chayla. Let's say, okay, this is the whole idea of a person is sometimes absolved from returning lost objects if his either age or respectability in society would be demoted for him to do so. If the person who finds a lost object is a Talmud Chacham or a venerated elder or a sickly person who just doesn't have the strength to do these things, and the lost item is among those things that he would normally not pick them up in the street, kagon sak, like a bag, or kupa, or a box, or argaz, or a chest, v'chol kayotze bazeh, things like that. Eno chayv l'tapel bahem. He's not obligated to engage in these things. Upater hu milahashivim liba'olam, and he would be pater from returning them to their owner. Zeh klal. And the general rule is therefore this: Kol she'im hachefetz haya shalo haya machzirin la'atzmo kachayv lahachzirin lachaver. Anytime, if the object was yours, you would schlep out into the street to retrieve it, then you have to retrieve it for your fellow Jew. Okay? In other words, if it's something, right? If it's something, however, that you would hire someone else to do, or you would get one of your children to take care of for you, the im al shalo haya moichel machamas kavodo. But if it was based on your honor, you would not be running out into the street to attend to this item. Gam b'shel acherim einu chayiv lahachzer. Then for other people, you're not obligated either. So,
if it's beneath you, if you're doing whatever, and do you have to tell someone else to do it? Do you have to ask someone else, or can you just walk on it?
So that's a very good question. Maybe you have to stand by it. If it was yours, would you stand by it until someone else came by to get it? Then you'd have to do the same. Whatever you would do for yourself, you have to do for other people as well. Our sages learned it out from what is written in the Torah. Lo tir'eh et shor achicha o et seyon nidachim v'hitalamta mehem. So the pasuk says, you may not see the ox of your brother or his sheep, nidachim, being what's the word? Lost, I guess you would say, lost or abandoned. V'hitalamta mehem, and then you hide yourself from it. V'darshu mozeh v'hitalamta, and from the word you're not allowed to hide from it, that pa'amim sha'atam yitalem, that there are times when you will hide because the word lo is so distant from the word vihit alamta that it teaches that sometimes you are vihit alamta, sometimes you are to hide yourself. Kagon zakein ve'ena lefi chavodo, such as a person who's an elder and it is beneath his honor. Umikol makom miderech hayashar v'hatov yesh lasos lifnim mishuras hadin. However, it is considered to be upright and good to go above and beyond the letter of the law. Umachzer es ha'aveda b'chol makom afal pi she'ena lefi chavodo, and to return lost items even if it normally would be beneath your honor. Ulam yesh omrim she'im hu talmid chacham ein lo lezalzel b'chvod torato. The one exception that is suggested by some poskim is that if you are a Talmud Chacham and it's going to reduce your prestige and your standing, perhaps if people see you like this, then you shouldn't, because it'll degrade the honor accorded to the Torah. Ulahachzer b'makom shelochiva otah Torah, to return something where the Torah exempts you. Ve'im rotza lasos lifnim mishuras hadin, yesh lo l'shalem l'ba'al ha'aveda. So therefore, a Talmud Chacham who wants to go above and beyond the letter of the law should just pay the person who lost the item for the item. Say, listen, I felt bad. I walked past your lost item, but it was a cat, and it was beneath my dignity to retrieve your cat. So I'd like to pay you for your cat. Here's your 10 cents. Okay.
Well, that's how the rabbi values it.
Okay. All right. Now, women's obligation in Hashavas Aveda. Isha chayevet b'mitzvahs Hashavas Aveda shaharezu mitzvahs aseh she'ein hazman grama. Women are equally obligated in the mitzvah of returning lost items because this is not a time-bound mitzvah. Va'afilu b'makom she'ein sham lav shelo tuchal lihitalem ela aseh bilvad. And that's true when there's no prohibition of lo tuchal lihitalem. There's only a positive commandment. The kol shekain b'makom sheish kam lav sheisha chayevet k'mo eitzel ish. And certainly when there's the negative commandment attached to it, that she's not allowed to hide, mitzvahs lo saseh, women are equally involved. Ela im kein matzah isha aveda keveda she'ein derech hanashim laseis masa kazeh berachov. Unless she finds an item that is so heavy that it would not be normal for a woman to be found carrying such a thing. Va'afilu yesh osim. In that case, she would be no different from the elder who it's beneath his dignity to deal with this kind of thing. But in that kind of situation, we would, again, probably say she should get on the cell phone, maybe call her husband or someone else that could do it. And
It may not be completely pertinent. You just walk on by.
yeah.
Something you can do.
Although we don't really find in the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda that you have to stand by the lost item. The Torah doesn't obligate you to do that. Whenever you're exempt, you can just keep walking. But lifnim mishuras hadin, you should try to figure out a way, if you're not going to be able to pick this up, to figure out a way to keep it protected from other people getting it. Okay.
This is the picking it up that makes you a shomer. So if you haven't touched it,
Yeah.
then you don't have the responsibility to watch it.
Correct. Now, peros shenaflu meha ilanos. Now, fruit that falls off of trees, is the owner going to be miyayish, and therefore you can just go and take it. Hamotze peros bitzad hasada. If a person finds produce near a field, v'yadua shehaperos naflu meha ilanos basada, and it's clear that the fruit fell from the trees that are abutting the road. Okay, imhem peros hanim asim benefila harehem shel hamotze. So if the fruit becomes spoiled when it falls off the tree because it gets bruised, and normally you wouldn't want to use that for regular produce, then the finder is allowed to keep it if he doesn't mind the bruising and the damage. Kagon eitz te'ena shahaderech shabalam isyashim kon menefilasam me'osam peros shenaflu shaharehem nim asim zacha b'hem hamotzi b'turim me'hamaisras. Now, an example of this would be a fig tree. Fresh figs are very mushy if they are impacted by something, right? And so we can assume that the farmer or the owner of the fig orchard has yeush even before they fall off the tree, saying to himself, whatever falls off the tree, I'm making hefker. And he furthermore says that they're putter from meiser unless you actually bring them into your home. But if you want to eat them right there, they're ownerless, and that's fine. Okay.
Fruit tree, if the limbs were hanging over the public reshus, that fruit, anything on those limbs that are over the public reshus are open, where you take it, whether they're on the tree or.
I don't believe that that's the halacha.
But
I think we go after, I know, but I think we go after the trunk of the tree. Yeah, we did learn this before, I know, but I think only things that fall off the tree. If things are still adhering to the tree, even if they're jutting out into the Rishus Harabim, I don't think that people have a right just to take them because they're in a Rishus Harabim, unless they're obstructing the Rishus Harabim, in which case you can cut them down. But if they're not obstructing the Rishus Harabim, just because they're in the airspace of the Rishus Harabim, I don't think that entitles people to take.
You're talking about between two neighbors.
What?
Two neighbors, if you did a
Between two
proper.
neighbors, yeah. But I mean, I was thinking the same thing on
I'm trying to extrapolate.
to the public.
If it's certainly if it's to prevent damage to your property, let's say it has like these berries that stain that will. Oh, really? Then I think you do have a right to trim back the trees. First of all, but it's always best to consult with your neighbor, but you do have a right to trim them back. A neighbor always has a right to trim back his neighbor's tree to the fence line, as long as it's not going to damage the tree. If it's going to damage the tree, then I think you have I'm not sure whether there's a halachic obligation or a moral obligation to discuss that with him. I just saw a photo online of a neighbor who trimmed back his neighbor's tree exactly to the property line. So it was like literally a half a tree. And people would come driving in for miles just to look at this spectacle. Like no one's ever seen something like this before. Like who is so asinine to do such a thing, right? He thought he was, I'll show you, and then it turns out it made him look like a jerk, right? To basically take a chainsaw and exactly.
Literally cut the tree in half.
Right, exactly.
They didn't kill the tree.
Apparently not, yeah.
Half the tree was survivable.
Aval bilanos she'ein derech she'haperos yinashru kagon zesim v'charuvim v'chayotze bazeh hareze kiyeh shalom midas. If, however, it is a type of fruit that doesn't spoil when it hits the ground, so then you have no right to take it unless you know that the owner has been miyash, right? So, for example, if it's olives, because fresh olives are very durable, they can hit the ground and they're hard, or carob and things like that, that would be something you would not be allowed to take. Utamarim shahashirasam haruach mutarim hayos v'chazkasam shahaba'olim mochalim. He says when it comes to dates that fall off a tree by the wind, so we can assume that the owner is moichel. Mipnei shahabale chayim ha'ofos v'hashratzim ochlemosam machmas mitikutam. Why can we assume that the owner is miyash, even though some dates, fresh dates, don't spoil? Because the owner will give up on them because since they're so sweet, he assumes that they will be eaten through by insects or birds. Okay? Ella im hailanus hayu shel hayisomim v'naflu peiros bein shehem nimasim bein shenashvali de haruach asurim keben shaktanim einam b'nei mechila. However, if the orchard belongs to minors, let's say they're orphans and their estate is being supervised by a custodian, so then you can't take it because they don't have the ability to be moichel. A katan doesn't have the ability to relinquish ownership on something. Could the apotropos relinquish their property on their behalf? I don't think so. Maybe he could. But I guess until you know that, you wouldn't be allowed to take it. Similarly, let's say the owner of the tree, whether the fruit becomes disfigured or not when it falls, if they build some kind of barrier around the tree, so Oshanasnu misaviv li'ilan bad oreshes kedei sheyiplu haperes l'socham, or they set up a net or some kind of tarp to catch the fruit when it falls. Bazeh megaladaito she'eno mochel. There he's revealing that he isn't mochel. Ve'en kan yeyush mitzad haba'alim ve'asurim lakachtam misham. And therefore that in itself is indicative that he's not miyayish, and you would therefore not be allowed to take it.
We're thinking of like, does that have to be permission from the owner that I'm gonna consider that leket? Like, how does leket work?
Well, the mitzvah of leket is something that the Torah obligates. It doesn't apply to an orchard. It only applies to a wheat field and a vine. Let's say what is it? A vine field? What would you call that? A vineyard. A vineyard. Thank you. That's where the mitzvah of leket and shechacha and peah apply.
So other stuff, it doesn't apply. Peah doesn't apply.
Correct.
You have a cornfield or something else.
I don't believe it could be maybe midrabanan. It applies to a cornfield, but it only applies to things. Right, I believe only midorais it applies to wheat and vineyards. Yeah, because those are the things that are addressed by the Torah.
You would think that it would apply to everything that you have. You have to leave your corners and or whatever falls off that you should leave it with the poor.
I'm pretty sure. I could be mistaken about corn, but certainly for the 5 grains it applies. It's a barley field, it would also apply. But I don't believe it applies to corn. In any event, so there the Torah says that whatever falls from the arms of the harvester, and I guess in the modern world, whatever is not caught by the machinery, the first round, the poor have a right to come in and take. I don't actually know how the mitzvah of leket and shechacha and peah apply in a modern agricultural society. I've never really researched this question. So it's a valid question. Is
they meant to leave the corners of the
Yeah,
field as well?
yeah,
So I mean, if you turn the corner, leave the edge sort of thing.
yeah.
But do you actually see that happening today? I don't
know.
That's the question.
I actually have never consulted with an Israeli farmer about this.
I would ask you. He does.
Okay, so ask
I
him.
would ask him. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Because he has all the vineyards and it's.
Yeah.
What about olives? Olives don't apply.
I don't believe so. No, it's a
I
tree.
visited a winemaker in Shiloh who only picked grapes from vines that the machines could not get to. So, I mean, that was in Israel. So there must be areas where that's the way it is.
I don't know. And I don't know if the poor go into fields. I have no idea.
Right.
Like, does that really happen today?
Is anybody growing their own? Well,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you own a wheat field, then you sell.
I understand if you're in a wheat field, but if somebody's going and gleaning the shafts of wheat, are they going to take it home and grind it and make it into flour today?
Sure. Well, there's multiple uses for wheat, even if you don't grind it into flour. You could also sell it. All right.
Well,
Let me know if you find what your research yields. Hey Siri,
Uh-huh.
do modern Israeli farmers practice the mitzvah of leket, shechacha, and peah?
She's confused.
Okay. Let me ask ChatGPT. Do modern Israeli farmers practice leket and peah. Yes, some modern Israeli farmers do practice leket and peah, though not universally, and often in coordination with charitable organizations. Here's how it generally works. Peah, leaving the corner of one's field for the poor, leket gleanings, individual stalks that fall during harvest must be left for the poor. How they're practiced today. While leket and peah are technically mitzvot aseh, they are not enforceable today by a beit din and are considered non-obligatory according to many opinions, especially since the biblical system of land ownership and tribal division isn't currently in place. So therefore, it would only be b'derabanan. However, some farmers choose to observe them as acts of piety and charity. So there's an organization called Leket Yisrael, is the largest food rescue organization in Israel and partners with hundreds of farmers to collect surplus produce, including leket and peah equivalent produce. Farmers either leave portions of their harvest for Leket Yisrael's volunteers. Yeah, and I've done that. I've picked for leket. Have any of you?
Yeah. When women pick
Or allow them to glean produce left over after harvesting. This is not a strict halachic implementation, but it reflects the spirit of these mitzvot adapted to modern logistical and legal systems. Some farmers set aside literal corners of their fields and inform organizations or individuals to come and harvest. This happens especially in religious moshavim or kibbutzim, or with farmers who are Torah observant and wish to uphold biblical commandments. In most cases where leket and peah are practiced halachically, rabbinic guidance is involved to ensure the mitzvot are observed properly. Some modern poskim have given a psak on how to fulfill these commandments in today's contexts. Modern mechanized harvesting makes it difficult to observe leket literally. Land ownership today is not always individual, complicating the application of agricultural mitzvot. Food safety regulations may prevent random individuals from entering fields to glean. Okay.
when we were doing that site, you were saying the land is actually owned by the Israeli organization.
Yeah, well,
And you pay tax.
yeah, Karen Kayem at Israel. Yeah, okay.
How much of the corn are you supposed to leave along the way?
The Mishnayos and Peah discuss it.
But how much?
How much you're supposed to leave? Yeah, I don't know that there's an absolute shear. Okay. Hamotze aveda ve'eno makir be'oleha tzarich lahachriz bevate knesios uvate midrashos. He did this already. If you find the lost item and you don't know who the owner is, you have to make a public announcement in shuls and in bate medrash. V'yochel litlos modos beluach hamodos shel beis hakneses, and you can hang a sign, Oliad Makom Hamitzia, or you can also place a sign where in the place where you found the lost item, and in all public places, you can hang it up in the mikvah, the tachanot autobus in the bus station, or any place where people gather. You can also put it, if you find it, let's say near an apartment building, you can hang it and put up a sign in the entrance to the apartment. Uveluach hamodaot shel alon hashchuna shebederch klal lo govim ra'us al pirsum mitzvahs ha'aveda. Yeah, as long as it doesn't cost money, you can also put up it on the bulletin board of the, I guess the.
Love this idea.
The entrance to the neighborhood.
Right, but what about sometimes you see something like a beanie or a glove that's on the ground? Has no name on it, has no symbol of any sign, and so you pick it up and you put it somewhere where it's obvious, on the seat of the bus stop or something high that it's off the ground, and then you walk away.
If you do that, it's only because you're assuming it doesn't belong to a Jew. But if you think that it's probably fell from a Jew, that would be insufficient. Let's say you find a Sefer Tehillim on the floor of the bus. You can't say, well, I'm going to do a good Samaritan act and I'll put it on the seat instead and then walk away. That's not sufficient. You can't do that. The other question is, which you're raising a good shaila, Doug, what if I'm walking through the park and it's in the middle of December and I see a kid's glove on the ground? Do I have a mitzvah? Practically, do I have a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda? On the one hand, you could say, yes, you do have a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, especially if it's a kid's glove. Maybe the parents don't even know about it. Although I would argue that if a kid comes home and he's only got one glove on, the parents probably know about it right away. And I would also argue that the parents are likely mi'aish because mittens or gloves are fairly inexpensive. And usually parents are mi'aish. But it could be an expensive glove, like a leather glove. So then I think there would be a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. And if you see such an expensive item, then you have a mitzvah to return it to its owner. Now, you could argue, it depends. All right, we'll have to stop it here. But again, if you